All right, I said I was going to take some questions, and instead of doing it inside in my office, which I'll do sometimes, I'll try and make this a little bit more, everything that I do a little bit more beautiful, add something to it, added something a little cinematic to it, because the world is ugly enough by itself, right? So the first thing that I want to address is, obviously I did that video on atheism, and I got a lot of comments on it. I'm getting a lot more. They're rolling in as we speak. So I wanted to talk about that, and then I have some other good questions that people asked me in the comments of other videos that I wanted to get to this week. So first of all, when it comes to the atheist video, yes, I did a little bit of attention-grabbing headline, like, atheists are wrong. But if you really look at what I said in the video, after the first, half of it, you realize I was actually setting up an argument against objective truth. Now, of course, the comments are full of all kinds of atheists, like, you don't know what real atheism is. Like, please. When I was about 12 years old, I was raised Catholic. When I was about 12 years old, I always like to tell this story because it shows a little bit who I am. And you had to do confession. And the priest would have me come in. All the little kids come in and they say, whatever candy that they took or whatever. And everybody hides behind the little shields so they don't get judged by the priest. And of course, I was the kid who was like, let me bring around a chair and let's talk about this. Because I was like, I don't think I did anything wrong. And I eventually got kicked out. I was never confirmed. I got kicked out of catechism classes because I was, I kept asking, I didn't believe what they had to say. They're saying, their answer to everything was, you have to have faith, you have to have faith. And to me, that was the first trust the science, was you have to have faith. So those things go together for me. Anyone who asks you to believe something without actually questioning it is someone I'm suspicious of. I don't care if it's a priest, I don't care if it's a PhD. They're the same thing. The appeal to authority. So I just thought it was funny that a lot of atheists thought I didn't know what atheism was. I'm like, man, I've been a non-believer all my life. And I went through my angry atheist phase probably in my 20s, like a lot of people do. And then, I was a priest in the Church of Satan for a little bit, which is, if anyone knows about that actual organization, they're all actually just atheists. I always call them theatrical atheists who like horror movies. And so I'm pretty well versed in that. I did straw man a little bit in the sense that I didn't specify between different types of atheists. Obviously, I've heard the word Gnostic before. I'm not a moron. Gnostic versus agnostic. Agnostic and the word Gnostic, and I did a podcast about this with a friend of mine recently. Gnostic has this mystical connotation to it. This connection to kind of occult knowledge, and it's been kind of brought even more into that space by James Lindsay. And so it just has a lot of mess to go with it. It's like, in terms of atheist and agnostic, I would be a little bit more agnostic, I think, now. But without God, atheist is also accurate. But here's why I don't identify as an atheist. And it is because it is an anti-identity. It is not something. It is not it is, instead of being something, it is not something. And that is a terrible frame. I'm simply not something. Well, how about you be something? You have a positive identity rather than having a negative identity. That's why I started solar idealism. Like, well, what do you believe? If your whole identity is, what don't I believe? That's a little disturbing. It's very much like resentment in the way that Nietzsche talked about it. I'm like, my whole identity is against something external to me, which is, I think a problematic frame. You want to have a positive frame. And that's what so many movements and anti-movements were against this or against that. They don't have a positive vision for the future, and therefore they don't really have a future. So if you want to create something, you have to create a positive vision, which is why I created my philosophy, solar idealism. Does it begin from a fairly atheistic or agnostic place? Yes, actually. But it goes beyond that. It has a positive vision. Like, well, what do we do from that? How do we create a more human future? And so that's really what I wanted to get at. And by kind of poking at atheists and theists in that video, I wanted to find the center and, kind of introduce some of the ideas that we have in solar idealism. So that's basically what I want to address in that. There's also really negative stereotypes that are associated with atheism, and I think in the comments they were represented very well. They have a reputation for saying, "Hey, we're critical thinkers," but they're so obsessed with the other side that they become pedantic and obnoxious, and also often wrong. 2020 exposed a lot of people who said that they were critical thinkers and clearly were not. If you don't believe in God, but you went and wore masks for 2 years and got vaccinated and boosted and all these things, and you didn't question that, you failed the test. And I'm not really interested in what you have to say after that. You are no more a critical thinker than someone who looks to a priest. You're just looking to academics for your authority. So, moving on from atheism, I just want to address some of those things because, people in the comments being like, "You don't know what you're talking about." Please, I was doing this while you were still like, I don't know, jerking off to Dora the Explorer. I used that in a comment the other day. I'm 50 years old. I've been a non-believer my whole life. Spare me. Here's a more concerning comment that I got from another video, and I responded to it, but I may even make another video about it because I have a lot of feelings, having been in some of those circles. I have a lot of feelings about people describe themselves as nihilists, or people who describe themselves as misanthropes. Obviously, we're in the city, so we're going to get a little more plain energy and so forth. So I hope you bear with me. It's better than I think doing it in the crappy little office environment that people do so often. Like to try to do stuff that's a little bit harder. But someone made this comment. And it was about my video that said, your life is a story. And it said, this advice doesn't work for me, even though I've asked the same question, because at my core, I'm a nihilist, and I feel like nothing you do on this earth even matters at all. I ask myself often, what's the point of living a righteous life? And unless you believe in some magical planet you go to after you die, then logically nothing matters because we all turn to dust over time. My story doesn't matter, and neither does my feelings towards it. And man, that is a depressing way to live. And this is something that I have to say about nihilists and misanthropes and so forth, is that your expectations about life and humanity are wrong. What are they based on? Like, nothing means everything. If you say that nothing means anything, unless it lasts forever, where did you get the expectation that things last forever? Like, where does that come from? There's nothing in the universe that validates that. The only thing that we have that is valid is that life is temporary, that everything is temporary, and that nothing lasts forever. So that should be your baseline expectation. And the idea that nothing, and people do this with relationships in their lives, they do it with all kinds of things. The idea that nothing matters unless it's permanent, man, that's a terrible way to live. Because you're placing an expectation on the world that isn't realistic. And, I probably will do a video about this because I think it's a really good subject, and a lot of people feel this way. It's literally the oldest story in the world is about a man struggling with his mortality. The Epic of Gilgamesh is about a man struggling with his mortality. He saw his best friend die. He doesn't want to die like his best friend. He goes on a big journey to find a way to not die, and then finds out he's going to die anyway, and then has to make peace with it. And that's what life is. So you just have to recalibrate your expectations. If you think that you have to do, nothing matters unless it lasts forever, then like nothing, yeah. I mean, the person said, why live another day? And yeah, that is the conclusion I would come to, if that is your expectation for anything good. But that's not a realistic expectation for anything good, is it? I mean, like, based on what? And the same thing comes with when people talk about misanthropy, like, oh, I don't like people. What other sentient creatures do you have experience with? Where are your expectations of how people are supposed to be coming from? I always say misanthropes are disappointed idealists. They believe that people are supposed to be a way that they're not and never have been. Read history. People have always been the same way. So you have to calibrate your expectations you can obviously hope for the best and expect better in the people around you, but you can't expect humans to behave in a way that humans have never behaved before. That's not realistic. And where are your expectations coming from? Like, where are these rules that everyone's supposed to abide by that they're not? If you really think about that position, it's really pretty ridiculous. All right, so that was something I wanted to address there. Another guy asked me, he said, there seems to be an evolution in thought and perspective from the way of men to the fire in the dark. My question is that through this evolution, how has it changed or deepened your perspective? Is it heathenry? Heathenry obviously being like, what I would call Germanic paganism when I was practicing it. And that really, in most heathenry, or paganism, whatever, the gods are more metaphorical anyway. Some people really believe that they're real. Again, there's, I guess, Gnostic and agnostic Germanic pagans and so forth. I did a video on Germanic paganism for the Order of Fires channel. And it was something that I went through. I did a lot of study. I don't call myself a heathen. I don't call myself a pagan. I don't like either of those words. They basically both mean hillbilly. And I don't really self-identify as a hillbilly with weird outsider practices. I'm not about creating an outsider perspective. So none of those things really fit for what I consider myself. So, and, I went into the weeds about my objections to Germanic paganism based on my experience. I mean, I've performed a lot of Germanic pagan rituals. I've done a lot of study, and the deeper I studied, the more I was uncertain that these people actually believed any of these things. There are a lot of different sources. Everything was written down by Christians. What do the runes mean? Well, when you find out how they decided what the runes mean, aside from rune poems, and then go into the Proto-Germanic, which everyone uses the Elder Futhark runes, and they're just, we don't know what they mean. I think they figured out what they think they mean or how they would pronounce them from like Gothic or something. It's all very theoretical. But these people take these runes and these things, because they get these books, and these books say, this is what the ancient people believed. And what people? These are a bunch of different tribal groups over a long period of time who probably believed a lot of different things and had a lot of different stories. The idea that they want to treat like the Eddas as if they are, the Bible, and that's not what they are. But they want to quote it in scripture and like, clearly in this verse it says that Odin says this, and it just becomes very ridiculous. That's, like I said, this stuff was written down by Christians, most of it, and great that they did that. But we don't know that people really believed those things, or to what extent they did, or to which people believed all those things. There's a lot of questions, and there's a lot more questions than answers as far as that goes. So my evolution, it's like, I would say my evolution from that is the way of men. I'm like, hey, men need a tribe. And I did some questioning myself, like, who is my tribe? Like, who are my people? And I did like 23andMe, I did all this stuff, and then I found this group that seemed like they could be my people, and they were not. But it took about 4 years to figure that out. And now I'm like, well, no, I've been to Germany 3 times, and I'm like, are Germans really my people? Well, not really. I'm from Pennsylvania. I'm American. I'm not German. There are some things we have in common, and there are some things we don't. And so, I just think people try to hold on to this thing from the past that they can't hold on to. Or try to reinvent this thing from the past that can't be reinvented. They don't even know what happened. So here's another question. This is a really good one. Do you think there's any form of therapy that is conducive to, as you say, becoming what you are as a man? I work with a lot of young men who initially were very skeptical of any sort of reflective or contemplative practice. And it is usually these same guys who turn out to be inhibited to the point of being debilitated insofar as the cultivation of any masculine quality is concerned. I'm not talking about some kind of show up for 3 sessions, get a diagnosis, get hooked on prescription medications sort of therapy. I'm talking something more akin to Freudian analysis or Jungian analysis. And my answer to this is, man, I've met some psychologists and therapists and so forth who I would trust, but I could count them. I couldn't even make it to a full hand. If I tried to count them on my hand. There's a couple guys who I would trust who have that background and do that work. But the problem with psychology, unfortunately, because what's cooler? It's just a shame the way that the far left has infected all of these disciplines and turned them into Marxism. But I mean, what do I do for a living? I'm kind of a gonzo anthropologist. I mean, I study man. That's what I do. But I would never go into anthropology. Why? Because it's all like communism and intersectionality and shit. And the same thing is true of psychology. Well, what could be cooler? Like studying the human mind and how it works. That sounds very exciting. But who goes into it? Female white Democrats, mostly. So am I going to take a young man and send him to a, Marxist feminist to have her mess with his head? No. So who could do the work is the question. Who would you trust to put inside the brain of someone who you wanted good things to happen to, someone who you wanted to fix, someone who you wanted to help? And that's why I joked about it in one of my other videos, calling them all unlicensed therapists, because they are, but I don't. I'm on the Hannibal Lecter side. I think that psychology is probably more of an art than a science anyway, and it probably shouldn't. I mean, obviously you have to be licensed to dispense drugs, but men's coaches probably do as good of a job as any therapist would. It's about finding the right one. Like, I'd hire a men's coach for myself, just because you can't always see all perspectives, and it's good to have someone to talk to who isn't going to be influenced by you or isn't trying to influence you necessarily, who doesn't have any skin in the game of what the choices that you make. I think that could be really valuable. It would just be like, who would I let inside my head? And the answer is, like I said, if I was having some problems, I have one guy who I would call and trust with that. I think his name is Sean Smith, off the top of my head. He basically works with men, and he's a married, together guy. But I've met him, and I think he's a solid dude. And I've watched him over years, and he always says solid things. So that's great. But I would look for men's coaches rather than therapy, because I don't think a lot of therapy is really created for a very spoiled population, if you think about it. And we didn't have therapy for most of human history. People had friends, people had elders, people had priests, people that they talked to, but they didn't go through a licensing process or school or anything like that. They just were generally considered by others to be wise and to have good advice. And I think that that's, someone who talks to somebody for a living, talks to people for a living, and they enjoy that. I don't do that because I'm not that empathic. I don't know that I could sit and listen to someone's problems all day long. I would probably get a little mean. But there are people who do that and who are pretty good at it. And so I would send people that way. You just have to make sure it's the right guy. It can't just be any guy. It has to be a guy who has your worldview. Because you don't want, it's like, well, what are you, they're directing you to some kind of norm. Well, what is that norm? And, so you want to make sure that their idea of what is good is similar to yours, so that they're sending you in the right direction and helping you make the right decisions rather than just sending you in the wrong direction, trying to make you someone who you don't want to be. And I think that way about a lot of religious activities and therapies and coaching and all that kind of stuff. Like, where are you trying to take me is what I want to know before I sign up. I'm not there for the mystery. Let's fuck around and find out. Another question, really simple, was does the Order of Fire have specific holidays or distinctive names for them? And the answer is no. I actually asked the guys this morning, and we're all of the mind that holidays and things like that should be things that happen organically. I try not to force a lot of things in our group because I want them to come about because we decided there was a need to have them, not because we were just trying to check some boxes. So a lot of the guys celebrate solstices. I do sometimes too. And what we found with that is that for kids especially, the solstice wheels, actually they love to see them burn. So it's a good way to get parents have gotten their kids involved in things. It's like, let's burn a solstice wheel for solstice. So that's been a positive thing. And a lot of guys in the Order of Fire who have kids have done that. And so that works out pretty positively. But anyway, guys, I hope you enjoyed me answering some of these questions. And I will see you next time. My name is Jack Donovan. Stay solar.